What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with Tech Daily, and in this video, we're going to be doing a full comparison between the new Realme 11 Pro Plus and the Samsung Galaxy A34. Now, I actually think these phones are super similar with what they offer, their specs, and their price point too. So chances are, if you're in the market for a solid mid-range device with as many flagship caliper features as possible, these are two smartphones you're probably considering. Though depending on what you value, like the camera features or the display or fast charging capabilities, one of these devices might be the better option. And we're actually going to take things a step further because the people at Realme who sent over this new 11 Pro Plus specifically wanted me to also test how durable it was. It's a pretty unique device with a reinforced curved front display and leather back cover, so we're going to see how that holds up with some stress tests. And I'm not going to hold back, so if you're squeamish, you may want to look away. So first things first, let's talk price. The new Realme 11 Pro Plus retails for around $300, but that can vary a little bit depending on where in the world you're located and what configuration option you choose. The A34 is technically a little pricier. It retails for closer to $330, but I've actually seen it selling up to $400 in Europe and the UK. And while we may only be talking about a difference of between 30 to maybe $100, that is a significant price discrepancy at this price range. If you're interested in doing some comparison shopping of your own, I'll leave links to where you can buy both these phones at their cheapest current prices down below in the video description. Physically, I actually think the A34 honestly looks sort of like a budget or mid-tier smartphone, while the Realme 11 Pro Plus mimics the design and form factor of a flagship. Size-wise, they're pretty similar. The Realme is a 6.7-inch device, that's the screen size corner to corner. The A34 is a 6.6-inch device, but you'll notice that the screen-to-body ratio on the Realme is a lot higher. It has a center hole punch cutout for the selfie camera at the top versus the A34's U-shaped notch, almost no side bezels thanks to its curved display, and not much of a bottom chin either. Comparatively, the Realme gives you greater than a 90% screen-to-body ratio versus an 85% screen-to-body ratio on the A34. Essentially, that means what you see on the Realme is all screen, with very little black borders distracting you from the display itself. And in the hand, the Realme is technically a few millimeters smaller all around, and feels thinner and easier to hold too, even though its screen size is bigger. Around back, my Realme 11 Pro Plus obviously has the premium all-leather back cover. The A34 rocks Samsung's Glastic, essentially just plastic all around, which is par for the course on a mid-tier A-series phone like this. In my opinion, the Realme just looks and feels a lot more premium. The leather cover has a soft textured feel, there's stitched accents running up and down the back and around the camera lens, and the copper and gold colored stripe is a nice touch. The A34 is sort of your plain Jane Samsung device, and while it does actually mirror the design and form factor of the top tier S-series phones, you just don't really get anything premium or unique with the design and especially not the build. Now, for as nice as these phones look, you could make some arguments about potential durability, like that curved glass on the Realme could be more delicate, or the plastic back on the A34 is a positive or negative depending on how you view it. But let's actually put these phones to the test and see how they hold up with some real-world scenarios of destruction. First up, a couple of drop tests. Now, I do want to mention that the Realme ships with a thin screen protector pre-installed, but I consider that a fair out-of-the-box comparison. Samsung could have added a screen protector. They used to on some of their A-series phones, but they don't anymore. So we're going to just drop these phones from a few different heights at a few different angles directly on my hardwood floor and see what happens. Start at pocket height, since that's probably the most common drop, and we'll also do some really high up drops from about 6 feet, which I realize is higher than most people, but if you're talking on your phone, maybe this might be a fair fall from head height, at least for me. I also went ahead and just flung these phones off the surface of my desk. You'd be surprised at how often I drop things when I'm not paying attention off my desk like this. I happen to knock everything over from time to time. I also dropped these phones a few times on my tile floor. I feel like that better mimics the hard ground of the outside world, and these drops theoretically could have done the most damage, to be honest. But after a half a dozen tries on the front, the back, the corners, the sides, and as random as I possibly could have made it, Fortunately, nothing shattered. Another thing I also want to test actually is screen durability with scratches. Now again, the Realme 11 Pro Plus ships with a screen protector, so it's a little unfair. But hey, if anything happens to the screen with the screen protector on it, you know you're protected. The screen protector itself may get scratched, but the phone is going to be just fine, and that's pretty much what we see. I personally deal with my phones getting scratches from my car keys, the metal button on my jeans, and from other phones in my pocket. So for me, this is a very realistic test. And actually, the A34 is already getting hairline micro scratches, which you might be able to see. On the Realme, you can just peel off the screen protector if it happens to get damaged like I did here, and the phone is going to be just fine. That's the most important bit. A few other things worth mentioning. To me, the leather rear cover on the Realme not only looks great, but it's also more versatile. You can scrub it clean, it's less susceptible to everyday scratches, and obviously it's not going to crack like plastic might. And over time, it'll get a nice sort of patina that looks rugged and classy, that sort of used leather look. A matte plastic like the A34 tends to get those micro scratches here too that honestly perpetuate the cheapness of it. And while I conducted these tests au natural, the Realme 11 Pro Plus does ship with a clear case too. So you get everything in the box to actually keep the phone protected, even though it obviously still held up perfectly well with these stress tests. Neither phone actually has any catastrophic damage. The A34 has some minor dings on its frame since it's plastic. The Realme has some smaller scratches on its polished edges, which happens of course, but the curved display on this phone is super strong, even though some people might think it's a weak point, and it held up really well. So jumping back to the specs, both these phones actually have phenomenal displays, and it's probably one of the top reasons to consider either one, and certainly an area where you get a lot of bang for your buck. Realme's slightly larger 6.7-inch display is an AMOLED panel with HDR10 Plus support and a billion colors at the full HD 2412 by 1080 resolution, a peak brightness of around 950 nits, and it is a 120Hz high refresh rate display as well. The A34 rocks a Super AMOLED display at a similar 2340 by 1080 resolution, 1000 nits of peak brightness, and it too is a 120Hz panel. Side by side, to me, both these phones look great. They offer a viewing experience that honestly does far exceed their price tags. They have what I consider to be the trifecta of screen specs: AMOLED for bold, bright, and super vivid and punchy colors, 1080 resolution, so everything is crystal clear, even at their big respective sizes, and even if you look at your phone real close, and 120Hz for a silky smooth and ultra responsive feel. The main difference in my eyes is just the fact that the Realme has that distraction-free look with minimal bezels, while the A34's display is surrounded by noticeable black borders. If you're looking for a more premium design with all screen, the Realme definitely offers that. And the curved glass isn't really all that extreme. Nothing is distorted, it doesn't affect your taps or touches. It's just a subtle yet much appreciated design cue that I think adds a bit to the look and high-end vibe. Inside, these phones are actually powered by pretty different specs, and actually I think the Realme has a decent advantage here. It has 12 gigs of RAM, which is more than some flagships have nowadays, and up to 512 gigabytes of storage. Just a ton of value for the money. The A34 has 6 or 8 gigs of RAM and up to 256 gigs of storage. Obviously, the Realme has quite a few advantages by comparison with its internal components, and again, for the price, well under $400, you're just getting a ton of value. Both these phones run Android 13. Obviously, the Realme has Realme UI 4.0, the A34 has One UI 5.1. Pretty different approaches to Android on both fronts, and I think this is going to come down to personal preference. The A34 is certainly very familiar to most people, while the Realme has a much more custom and tailored feel. The big thing really here is just that performance-wise, the Realme 11 Pro Plus has a decent advantage with a brand new processor and way more RAM than most people could ever utilize probably, but that just means you can push this phone a lot harder, especially with gaming, for example, and it'll be able to handle anything and everything you throw at it. The A34 is no slouch by any means, and for most everyday tasks, it's a perfectly capable device. But to me, the Realme almost borders on having over-the-top flagship internals in a way, which again, for the price, just screams value. As far as the battery sizes and charging speeds, both these phones actually have pretty good sized 5,000 milliamp batteries crammed inside. And I found that they both easily last a full day and then some on a single charge, no problem. Neither device has wireless charging support or any other power features. However, when it comes to standard wired charging speeds, the Realme 11 Pro Plus can juice up at up to 100 watts. The A34 supports 25 watt charging. And honestly, 100 watt fast charging is just ridiculous at this price point. Very few flagship phones even support that, let alone a device like this for sub $400. And the Realme will basically spend less than 30 minutes plugged in before it's back up to 100%. There's no comparison really. The 11 Pro Plus has a huge advantage here, and it's honestly been a long time since Samsung was ever that concerned about charging speeds for their phones. Finally, when it comes to the cameras, I think it's pretty obvious that the 11 Pro Plus wants you to know its camera setup is a standout feature. It's basically 1/3 of the back of the phone. And spec-wise, it definitely backs up that over-the-top design. Its camera hardware consists of a 200 megapixel main shooter, an 8 megapixel ultra-wide lens, and a 2 megapixel macro. The selfie camera is also a pretty respectable 32 megapixel lens. The A34's camera setup consists of a 48 megapixel shooter, a similar, slightly wider 8 megapixel ultra-wide lens, and a 5 megapixel macro. The selfie camera up front is a 13 megapixel lens. Now, both these phones do offer a lot in the way of camera features and shooting modes, but I actually think the Realme has a couple of advantages here. For starters, you can shoot in the full high-res 200 megapixel mode for some ultra-detailed shots. Megapixels aren't everything, and the A34 has a high-detail 48 megapixel mode, but I think you can definitely tell the Realme captures quite a bit more in every shot. Also, the Realme has far better zoom capabilities. Up to 4 times lossless zoom and 20 times digital. The A34 maxes out at 10 times digital. That to me is practically a flagship camera feature. You've also got multiple portrait pick options on the Realme, dedicated pro controls for night mode, long exposure, starry mode for better night sky pictures, and time lapses, and actually, in my opinion, better low light pictures entirely. The A34 is a solid picture and video taker in its own right, but I've always thought that Samsung's A series still felt like a budget or mid-tier camera setup at best. It's like they're too afraid to give the A series their flagship camera capabilities because then they'd just be too close to the S series. The Realme 11 Pro Plus, on the other hand, I think does a nice job adding some of those high-end flagship-esque camera capabilities, but still packaging it all within a super affordable smartphone. All in all, to me, the new Realme 11 Pro Plus seems to offer a lot for its budget or mid-tier price point. Super premium and unique design that obviously holds up well durability-wise. Crazy over-the-top specs powering it, ridiculous fast charging, better than average camera capabilities. The A34 is definitely a good mid-ranger in its own right, but it still looks and feels like a mid-tier smartphone, with a number of compromises in its design, specs, and camera capabilities that justify that distinction. While it may be more widely available than the Realme 11 Pro Plus, if you have the opportunity, I think you should seriously consider what the Realme has to offer, because this is a device that really should be motivating other smartphone manufacturers to offer more with their mid-level devices. This one I think punches well above its weight class, and it is an incredible value by comparison. But what do you guys think about the new Realme 11 Pro Plus? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, of course. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video though. Be sure to follow Tech Daily on Twitter and subscribe to the Tech Daily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.